All right, fantastic. Well, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz, and I'm from Course Report. Course Report is the go-to resource for students who are researching coding boot camps. If you're exploring a career in tech, whether that is in software development or machine learning and AI, or data science or cybersecurity, Course Report helps you compare and choose the right boot camp for your goals. And today we are zooming in on cybersecurity, which is one of the fastest growing fields in tech. There are over 100, I think, cybersecurity boot camps listed on Course Report, and choosing the right one can feel a little bit overwhelming. So we are particularly happy to welcome our panelists today, who are all cybersecurity boot camp alumni and have actually been through it themselves.
Yeah, and hi everyone. I'm Jess, and I'm the content manager at Course Report. And thank you so much for joining us in this live Q&A. Our goal today is to really demystify cybersecurity as a career path and answer your questions, and also give you a realistic idea of what it takes to move from career changer to cybersecurity professional. So let's jump right in and introduce our fabulous panelists today. Ariel Bradley has a Bachelor of Science degree in music industry and a background in physical security, and enrolled in Springboard Cybersecurity Career Track Bootcamp in 2022. Ariel is now an information security cybersecurity through Lighthouse Labs. He graduated from Lighthouse Labs in late 2023, and with that diploma, he is now working as a security architect and analyst in the energy sector for NWR.
And then Igor Vlasenko graduated from Flatiron School in 2022 and now works as a senior information security analyst at Western Union. He recently also started a Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity last year from Western Governors University. Thanks for being here, Igor. And Chris Huber spent 23 years in the US Air Force before enrolling in a Skill Bridge program with Allegiant Vets. And then he took on a second Skill Bridge opportunity with Rapid Ascent for their dedicated hands-on cybersecurity training. And Chris graduated in February and now serves as a cybersecurity coach. So thanks so much for being here, Chris. So, as you can already tell, I think from those intros, cybersecurity is not a one size fits all career. Our panelists all come from really diverse backgrounds: music, insurance, the military, and beyond, and have all landed in really different roles.
Yeah, so we're going to start with questions you submitted when you RSVP'd for this event, but we also want this to be interactive. So if you have a question during the discussion, you can drop it into the Q&A feature on YouTube Live, and we'll get to as many as we can during the next hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if you are tuning in before we dive into our first questions, we can kind of get the chat going. So think about a couple of questions. You can think about where you are in your cybersecurity journey. Are you just starting to explore cybersecurity as a career option? Or are you researching boot camps maybe? And if you are, then please tell us which ones, because we would love to know. Or maybe you've already decided on a boot camp or like a certification course, and we would also love to know which one you've decided on. Or, we get a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions in the RSVPs about certifications for this panel. So I'll pitch that one back to the audience as well. Are you planning on going after any cybersecurity or IT or networking certifications this year? And if so, which ones? Let us know in the chat, and just, yeah, let's get the conversation started. And then for everyone on our panel, I think we can start with a big question, which is, why did each of you ultimately choose the boot camp you attended? So let's kind of back up, rewind, a few months or maybe even a couple of years and think back. So Ariel, maybe let's start with you. You were working in physical security operations before you went to Springboard. Why did you choose Springboard to make that career change?
Okay, so I was looking at quite a few options. I was considering going through boot camps through actual universities. I'm from Pennsylvania, so like UPenn or Temple University. And then I also were looking at the standard boot camps. The reason why I chose Springboard is because one, it is at your own pace essentially, and then two, you can also choose. What path you want to go down. So if I didn't want to do cybersecurity, I could have done data, and I just love that flexibility of that. And then also the job guarantee program as well. So in Springboard, besides the curriculum, you also will have a job guarantee program where you'll have a career coach guide you through how to apply for jobs, helping you to find ones in your area, help you to negotiate, and all of that. So that's the reason why I chose Springboard.
Okay, fantastic. And Caleb, you were working in the insurance industry, and so why did it make sense for you to move into cybersecurity with Lighthouse Labs? Why did you choose Lighthouse?
Well, the insurance industry it moves like slow molasses. They never innovate. They don't do anything fast. And so if you're interested in being able to do things that are interesting to you, you'll have to wait 20 years before it actually is implemented. So I had spent the last couple years of that career just bouncing around from position to position to try the different avenues and aspects of insurance. And I did almost all of the different things you could possibly do, short of like running my own company. And it just got so raw. It just got so painful to continue doing that day in, day out. And there was no future. I could see that there was nowhere to go. Cybersecurity, I initially started thinking about it because I was very interested in the whole scam ideology of how does that work, and because they keep becoming more and more prevalent. My grandmother was scammed, and so that gave me a bit of a personal avenue on it. So when somebody had suggested the idea of cybersecurity, I the biggest fear I had was losing all of that experience, losing all of my past time and effort and skills, and thinking that they'd be completely irrelevant. Tech is an incredibly different. It's a complete 180. There's very little technically that is relevant. At least that's what you'd think. When I started looking into the different schools, Lighthouse Labs was it particularly stood out. For one, because they got some really good reviews, but two, they had an accelerated program. It was a 3-month program, and I figured I can do anything for 3 months. And there's a lot I can't do, but I can focus on something and just knuckle down, do the 12-hour days for 3 months, and I can manage that. And when I got into it, I realized I actually love this, and it didn't seem like 12-hour days. I mean, even if it was longer, you actually strongly enjoyed it. Lighthouse Labs has several really good things about it. Everything I learned, I guess 95% of the softwares and systems and things that they went through in the course were incredibly useful. I've used them in my job now. And then they also had a very impressive after support system, especially getting jobs. So they walked me through different things every week. They were giving me advice on how to spruce up my resume or good companies to apply for or tips and tricks. And ultimately, some of those tips got me the job. It actually got me the connection, and that's how I was able to move forward. So I'm loving it now, and I've realized most of those skills that I had from insurance, they absolutely do transfer over. There's several of them that are phenomenally useful.
I was gonna say, I feel like maybe some of that like risk management from insurance, maybe there's
Hmm.
some overlapping um, background skills that would overlap from insurance. That's super
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, being
But
able
also,
to read can read policy wordings and read legal documents, you can read a manual for anything tech related. It's a very similar skill.
cool. Okay, so accelerated, that 3-month accelerated format was appealing, good reviews. That also stood out about Lighthouse Labs. Okay, cool. And then Igor, do we have you? I know you were working as a bartender before Flatiron School. Did you research other boot camps, and what stood out about Flatiron School? I'm hoping that we have your audio. if not, then we'll move on to Chris, and we'll hope that we can come back to you in a moment. But so Chris, you had a really nice long career in the Air Force before you transitioned into cybersecurity. And so can you tell us a little bit about how you found Rapid Ascent?
Yeah, sure. So after serving 23 years in the Air Force, with most of that time as an in-flight refueler, I wanted a new challenge. So something I was passionate about. And I'd always been interested in computers and cybersecurity. And when you're transitioning out of the military, they have these programs called SkillBridge, which will allow you to take off up to 180 days prior to your separation to learn a new career. So I started looking at different SkillBridge programs and ended up going with Allegiant Vets initially. I hadn't found out about Rapid Ascent yet, but during one of the subject matter expert presentations that we would consistently have every week with Allegiant Vets, their executive director for Rapid Ascent, Kim Archer, came and talked about their awesome hands-on program. So what really stood out to me about Rapid Ascent was its hands-on immersive approach. So they didn't just teach theory, it was more actively engaging in real world cybersecurity challenges, which made transition from military to civilian cybersecurity a whole lot smoother. And I think more, what's the word? It's just more of a real world approach to it. So.
That's really cool, and I want to learn a little bit more about SkillBridge too. But you were actually you do SkillBridge when you are still in the military before you've actually transitioned out, right?
Right, and based on commander approval, you can do it up to 180 days, so really 6 months. And so I jumped into Allegiant Vet's 6 month program, which was all kind of labs and kind of more theory than it was hands-on, right? So it was like different certifications I could get. And then Kim talked about how we can kind of pair their program with Rapid Ascent. It did make for some really long days, but it was really great because, I mean, it was full 8 hour days pretty much with Rapid Ascent. But then I could do a couple hours of just get my CBTs, my computer-based training done for to keep up with my Allegiant Vets program.
Cool. So you could basically do Allegiant Vets and Rapid Ascent through
Yep.
SkillBridge. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. You can stack them. I mean, one's your official SkillBridge, but the other, as long as you're completing your initial, what your commander approved, then you can add whatever you want on top of it.
And does SkillBridge cover the tuition?
So with Allegiant Vets, there was no tuition on that one. That was a cost-free one. But with Rapid Ascent, you can use your GI Bill. So I ended up using 3 months of my GI Bill, which covered all of it. Plus I got, some stipends, some money basically to, if I needed any hardware or anything to help along with the course or any books, stuff like that.
Very cool.
And so, the GI Bill covered everything with Rapid, which was great.
That's awesome. We had a time management question from Barnally, who wanted to know what a time management strategy looked like for you folks during the boot camp. So let's hear from folks who attended like a more regimented program versus like a more self-led program. Caleb, Lighthouse Labs, a bit more regimented. So what was your time management strategy during those 3 months?
So the regimented approach was absolutely one of the draws of Lighthouse Labs, since the idea of an open learning it's not something that I do overly well with. I need a deadline, and Lighthouse Labs was really good about, for one, creating those deadlines, but also following up on them. So the time management wasn't necessarily just me trying to motivate myself to get this thing done. It was the instructors were checking in. They had I can't remember the term for it, but essentially a student success coordinator, I think was the term, where they were actively checking on me throughout the process. So when I was behind on different projects and had difficulties, I didn't just have to figure it out myself like you'd think of in a standard maybe university setting where you're just one out of a million students. There were smaller classes. You were able to ask the questions in the middle of the class, and then they were following it before and after. Now, my personal strategy, one of the things I realized, if I'm doing an accelerated course, I had to not sever my social life, but almost. I had to tell the people that were close to me I'm going to be really busy. I'm not going to be able to do these standard commitments that we might be doing, the regular, once a week dinner appointment, it's not going to happen for 3 months. So I had to open up the schedule. A lot of people think that, well, I can juggle all these different things, and if you're doing an accelerated boot camp, I would strongly disagree with you. You can't do a part-time job or a full-time job while you're doing it and trying to manage 12+ hour days. It's just not possible at all. So that was a big thing. And then segmenting time and switching the standards, you know, organizational and time management strategies of being able to, you do one task for a certain period of time, switch it to a different topic. It frees up your brain, it frees up your mental stack, and then making sure you have adequate food support. Like my wife was phenomenally supportive in helping me get through the different times and so on. So I didn't have to deal with the standard chores that I would do. She was able to take a bit more of that load instead.
Awesome suggestions there. And Ariel, you mentioned earlier that the flexibility was really important when you were enrolling at Springboard, and you actually joined another panel of ours last year about part-time boot camps. And talked a bit about time management. So since Springboard is that more self-led, but with mentorship type program, what was your effective time management strategy that you used during that time?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that discipline is truly needed if you're going to do one of these self-led boot camps. You'll have to have your own motivation, discipline. You don't have someone checking on you in the same way that you would have, let's say, if you are doing an in-person boot camp, or even a virtual class that meets at the same time every week. We did have an academic advisor that we will meet with weekly or bi-weekly. It's been a year or so since I've finished the boot camp, actually longer, but I think it was like at least weekly. We would meet with our academic advisor to ask any questions, and then also we had deliverables each week. I would say highly suggested it was due every week. Like you wouldn't get a failing grade if you didn't finish it, but they had soft deadlines for everything. And also, to make it clear as well, these boot camps are expected to be finished in 6 months for Springboard. But for me, I'll be honest, since I was learning how to balance and discipline my time and my priorities, it took me 9 months. During the time that I did the boot camp, I freshly moved to a new state, didn't know anybody, also was working more than full time, because I was trying to, get on my feet in a new state, and establish myself. And I was working physical security, so that can be exhausting. But what I would do to manage that though would be going to work, and then after I do my 8 to maybe 12-hour shift, immediately go to a library or a coffee shop. Those became my best friends. And then kind of what Caleb was saying is, managing your social life. I didn't really have one because I didn't really know anybody at the new state I was in, so that made things easier. But yeah, just going to coffee shops, libraries, having that set time, even if you calendar block and say, okay, from 6 to 10 p.m., I'm only working on boot camp work, studying, because also you have to get certifications, or if you want to take certifications, you need to put time for that, plus understanding the concept and doing projects and labs so you can have your own deeper understanding of the cybersecurity realms and information as well. So yeah, discipline was definitely key. And just making sure you know what your goal is and really believing in yourself for it as well, because you don't really have someone, kind of saying, oh, you need to get this done, you need to get this done. Like you will face whatever consequences or benefits if you complete it or don't.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that really just shows that there's a spectrum of cybersecurity boot camps out there. There are super flexible options, and then there are also the 3-month accelerated boot camps where you're going to be held super accountable to complete it in 3 months. And depending on what you need at the time, there is an option. There is an option for you. So So that thanks both of you for explaining, kind of both sides of the spectrum. And okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what you all actually learned in the curriculum, what the curriculum actually covered, and maybe we can focus on like the most useful skills or tools that you learned in the boot camp that you now use on the job. So Chris, let's start with you. What did the Rapid Ascent curriculum actually cover?
So, I would say the bootcamp covered a pretty wide range of topics between network security, threat intelligence, incident response, SIEM tools. You get hands-on with all that, penetration testing, and we actually even got into scripting in Python. Which is something that's very useful in the real world, right? So I'd say one of the most valuable skills I learned was log analysis and using SIEM tools like Splunk. Being able to identify anomalies and correlate security events in real time is something that is 100% needed in cybersecurity. But Rapid Ascent does a really good job of kind of touching, because there's 1,000 different jobs in cybersecurity, right? So I think they do a really good job kind of touching on everything that's out there. If somebody's maybe less technical, then they may, go the RNC route, or something to do with, what's the word I'm looking for here? I forget. Yeah, policy. So more of like into policy making like that. Or if you're more technical, the instructors were really great. Like if you wanted some more technical stuff, the instructors would meet with you on the side in coaching sessions. Like if you wanted to go further into Python or further into penetration testing, Terraform, just it really, they had everything. And I'd say a pretty good explanation of all of it. So at least you had an understanding of each of the topics throughout.
Okay, that's super helpful. And Caleb, at Lighthouse Labs, how deep did you go into those topics? Like, what did the curriculum cover in those 3 months?
A lot of it sounds quite similar to what Chris was experiencing. They did a broad approach, and I had one point, I heard somebody complaining, it's like, hey, well, we're not focusing on this particular software. And the same thing as Chris was mentioning, the industry is so vast. If you focus on a very specific software, then what happens if your job doesn't have that software? Each company is very specific in the types of things and tools that they use. So they did give us a broad knowledge. Now there is certain softwares, things like Wireshark, things like learning how to use Linux and you do bash scripting and PowerShell commands. Those things are pretty universal across the industry. But so those were the more technical things that they focused on, like Wireshark. We spent a good amount of time on that, and the things like policy wordings, learning what the NIST frameworks are, just these general broad scoping things that'd be very useful. But then one of the things I loved about Lighthouse is none of their instructors are full-time instructors. They're all currently actively working in the field, and so when they're in your class, and we didn't have one or two instructors. We probably had 15 different instructors over the course, and they would cycle through as they were available. So every time that they're teaching us, they'd give us real world examples, sometimes things that they did that day. So that gave us a vast array of, especially as Chris mentioned, touching on the topics. And you're never going to be able to become a true expert in everything, right? The industry is way too vast. So but at least being exposed to it, then you can start to realize, oh, I like this particular side of things, and you can start focusing more on that. So Lighthouse, yeah, they covered a lot of things like policies and more of the interactive setting things up with other people. They talked about the technical network side of things. They talked about the individual tools. It was a very wide array of things. That's the thing I probably learned the best out of it was learning how to learn by drinking from a fire hose. There's so much information, and it doesn't just stop in the course. It's continuous throughout the industry.
Thanks, Caleb. That's also super helpful. And Ariel, what did the Springboard Cybersecurity Career Track curriculum cover? Was it similar? Does that sound similar to the other boot camps?
Yeah, most certainly. I feel like Caleb kind of nailed it, saying it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. Because, that was one of my biggest, I guess, not complaints, but things that I mentioned to people that were interested in doing a boot camp. Like there's a lot of information, and since it's in a short amount of time, you don't get to go like completely in depth, or even if you do, like we were even doing like, I guess, labs. I forgot what the vendor was named, what was called, but we were doing labs where we actively were, let's say, looking into logs or using Wireshark or doing things with Python and Splunk and everything. But it's just going so fast where unless like you have a set interest in that, which I suggest if you have an interest in anything that you're doing in this in the boot camp, just do personal projects to understand it further. But it was too fast for me to say, okay, I completely fully understand the concept. But again, that's kind of on you to be exposed to all of these different realms, and then to pick what you have interest in. But I did save a list of the 6 core concepts for Springboard. Yeah, 6. Host-based security, network security, identity and access management, security assessment and testing, security operations, and application security. So those are the main 6 ones. And of course, it'll go into like subcategories for each. But the one that was most useful for me, I would say both security operations and network security. The reason why I say security operations is because that's what I'm currently working in now, which I truly enjoy. But I would say network security and even like application security overall, because that exposed me to a cybersecurity field that I didn't even consider when I first wanted to go into, or security engineering. When I first did sign up for Springboard Bootcamp, I wanted to do penetration testing and ethical hacking. But yeah, I kind of learned, so I'm like, okay, well, that will take some time for me to actually, like, I guess, understand fully, because that's close to as technical as you can get. I mean, same with network security if you want to become a security engineering, which is my end goal. But to start off, yeah, it takes years unless you went to school, like let's say did your undergrad, or a lot of years as a hobby doing really technical things. But for me, I went to school for music business, finance, did one cybersecurity class, which was difficult. And then I worked in physical security for a while. So yes, if I want to get into ethical hacking like I wanted to, it would take a long time. And I honestly wanted to get into cybersecurity as fast as I could. So it's just factoring all of that, and then just being exposed to different domains as well.
Thanks so much, Ariel. I mean, I think it sounds like for all of you, the curriculum was very broad to kind of expose you to many different parts of cybersecurity, and then you should expect that you'll specialize as you get into your first job, or maybe get into your first, or do your first like certifications. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so then let's talk about certifications a little bit.
Let's talk about certification. So many questions from everyone about certifications. So let's do a little bit of like a lightning round on certs right now. So just a quick show of hand from our panelists. Raise your hand if you think you need a certification to land your first cybersecurity or IT job. Okay, we've got
nobody needed one. But then raise your hand if you have gotten the certification since you graduated. Everyone has. Okay. Oh no, okay. Caleb hasn't. Okay. And then I know Igor we couldn't get Igor's mic to work, but I know that Igor has. Okay, so which certifications have y'all gotten?
I can go first. So I ended up getting Security Plus. I had several, certificates through like LMS programs and stuff. Mm-hmm. But as far as certifications, I went with Security Plus.
That's CompTIA Security Plus.
Yeah, CompTIA Security Plus, sorry.
Just for everyone to be on the same page. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Rapid Ascent was all over that. So we spent, so with Rapid Ascent, you were pretty much given your choice. If you've already had the Security Plus, they would help you get to another one. So if you wanted like your Pen Test Plus or what have you. Mm-hmm. But as far as, I think the majority of people are going after Security Plus, at least getting out of the military, especially with their clearance, because it's a government requirement to work for the government. You have to have a Sec Plus at least. But yeah, Rapid Ascent spent a solid week coaching us, adding an extra coaching session every day to make sure we were kind of prepped for that. And yeah, it worked out great. And on top of that, we got 30 credits through City University just for going through the course. So it's almost all your core bachelor credits right there.
Oh, cool.
So but yeah, it worked out great. I just actually took my test last week and passed it. So
Oh, congrats.
Amazing.
Thanks.
How hard was it, Chris?
it was actually I wish I would have studied a little bit more. So the big thing I would remember is acronyms. If you don't have the acronyms memorized, you're not going to understand the question. You're not going to understand what answers are automatically wrong because you're just guessing what that acronym means, right? So if you have a solid grasp of the acronyms, I'd say it wasn't too difficult. I will say that the entire time you're taking the test, you're going to feel like you're failing. But yeah, then you get that nice surprise at the end. It's like, oh, congratulations, you passed. And you're like, I'm not sure how, but yeah, awesome.
Okay, Ariel, you're nodding your head. Did you also do Security Plus?
Yes, yeah, I did the Security Plus. That was my same exact experience with taking the exam. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I failed this. And then with Springboard, they give you a free voucher for the exam. That's part of the tuition. And yeah, I was like, oh no, I'm going to fail this and I have to pay out of pocket. And then also, as I stated earlier, I was freshly moved to a new state, working a lot just to kind of survive, if I'll be honest. So, yeah, I didn't have the extra $365, I think it was, to pay for the exam. So it did create a lot of anxiety. I barely passed, which is, I've still passed, but it's pretty difficult. And yeah, I would agree. Acronyms, and then also knowing how to apply what you're learning. Honestly, I did cram it, but don't do that. I spent about maybe 2 months, maybe less, honestly, going through the entire textbook, about like 1,000 pages, taking notes, taking practice exams. And I would say the practice exams really help. Professor Messer, if you guys are looking to do certifications, watch his videos. I paid the $25 to get full package that he had. I think it was his practice test as well, and the answers. Those were very helpful. Going to Udemy, Coursera, all of that. I don't know if I'm supposed to name drop any other companies, but yeah, use all of those tools. And then I also dropped in the chat, a hierarchy chart of all the different certifications, just in case you want to go to a specific route. But Security Plus is pretty standard in terms of getting your foot in the door of cybersecurity, and then you can go certain paths.
Okay, that is super helpful. And is there one that anyone is thinking about going after next?
Yes. Okay.
What do you want next?
So it's really expensive, but my job, they're going to help with that. But SANS, since I work in security operations, that's going to be my next one. It's, I think, an actual 5-day, very intensive course to help you prepare for it, and then you'll do the exam. But overall, one of my end goals is doing a CISSP, since I want to go into security engineering.
And CISSP is the that's the high level certification, right? It's the hardest.
Yes, that's on that list. Yeah, but that's years down the line.
Amazing. And your company will kind of support you in moving towards that?
I hope so. It's a learning company, so
that's so cool.
I'm hoping they do.
That's so cool. So the first one, Security Plus through Springboard, and getting that first voucher included with Springboard, and then the next ones are through your company and kind of learning on the job and getting trained on the job. And I mean, it sounds that's the dream, right?
Yeah, that's the one good thing about cybersecurity. I feel like it's definitely a field where you'll continuously be learning. So that's one good thing if you like that.
Yes, I do feel like, as we talk to a lot of alumni in cybersecurity, of all of the fields in tech, cybersecurity is definitely the one where there's the most kind of built out, established framework for certifications and continuous learning. There is the expectation for continuous learning for all fields in tech, but in cybersecurity, it's much easier to ask your employer, to tell your employer, I want to go after this next certification. can you help me by, paying for this next course, or like supporting me in this next goal. And so that's amazing that that's actually happening. Caleb, any plans to, or have you talked to your employer about doing a certification? Or, I mean, I think it's actually interesting that nobody raised their hand when we asked, like, do you need a certification to actually get that first job, right? It's not actually necessary, but then
Yeah, and I'd
it's
say I'm living proof that that's the
right,
case. I mean, Lighthouse Labs actually did provide me with a voucher, and I was studying to take the test. I actually did take the test, but had technological issues and it crashed halfway through, so I didn't pass or fail. But I was going to reschedule that, and then I got my job, and I honestly haven't had time to actually reschedule the test. So most of the people that I work with, I think say about 80% of our department has the Security Plus. So then that was what I was going to go for. But I'm living proof that you don't have to have this certificate, even though that's but so many people had told me that you have to have the certificate to get a job, and clearly not. So once I get that, my plan is to do CISSP, and I got the manual, and that thing's a beast. That and or pen testing is the other one, the CompTIA pen testing cert.
amazing. All right, cool. So kind of due to technical issues, you don't have it, but that's the plan. And through Lighthouse Labs, like the goal is to get that Security Plus
Exactly. Their courses were
manufacturing.
directed toward that, and they were actively pushing any student to, if you can take it, take it. We'll give you this. We'll give you the voucher. Just make sure you go for that.
Amazing.
Sweet.
All right.
Yeah, and it's also good to know too. I feel like the certification argument is so, if you're a career changer and you don't have the quote unquote experience yet, that's a way to show that you have that knowledge. But as Caleb and everyone here is proving, like, you don't necessarily need the certification, even as a career changer, to prove that you have this knowledge, you can do this job. So that's great to see. Should we move on to making the career change, Liz? Should we dive into those?
I think so, yes.
Questions we got. Okay, great. So we had a question from Maxwell about how long it actually takes to get into cybersecurity, to join the field. So from starting the boot camp to landing your first cybersecurity job, Caleb, I'd love to pitch this one to you. Like, how long did it end up taking you?
From start to finish, about a year. You can't just start. I'd imagine everybody else would agree. You can't just start a boot camp tomorrow. There's processes to start. Lighthouse Labs had a ton of material, pre-work material you had to do. You had to do a couple different tests, like you had to do some logic tests and technical tests. They gave me all the material for the technical test, but things like the logic test, if you're not great at logic and you don't think you could pass one of those, this might not be the industry for you. There's a lot of logic problems. There's a lot of putting two and two together. So it took me obviously there was the course for 3 months. It was about a month or two of prep before that, and then I was doing studying after that and applying for jobs, et cetera, et cetera. It was about a year in total.
And Ariel, how long did it end up taking you? I think you said it was about the same, about a year.
Yeah, and actually a little bit longer from start to finish. 9 months for the boot camp, and then 9 months applying to jobs. So 18 months.
Okay. So it seems like people should be expecting a year to maybe 2 years. If you're very lucky, maybe 6 months. That seems like a unicorn kind of number, but.
And Chris, you have the background in the military. Ariel, you have this background in physical security. You're working in physical security as well before. Do you think that you both found it easier to transition into cybersecurity since you kind of came from this like security background? Do you think that is we've kind of talked about different like diverse backgrounds that you can come into cybersecurity with. Do you think that there's any overlap, or do you think that there's a that people with a military background can make an easy transition into cybersecurity?
So I would say that my background in aviation and leadership helped me a lot, discipline-wise, discipline, teamwork, decision making under pressure. So the technical aspects of cybersecurity were definitely new to me, like a lot of the stuff. I had never touched a Linux system in my life, and now Linux is probably my favorite system to play around with. So I think the key is kind of taking that problem solving mindset that you develop in the military and applying it to your cybersecurity scenarios. So I'd say military veterans excel in the field because they're used to handling high pressure situations, adapting quickly, and kind of following strict protocols. So I think all those skills are crucial in cybersecurity. So I'd say, yeah, I think being prior military did help me a lot, at least with the discipline aspects of it. So
Obviously, everybody in your SkillBridge program was from the military, but is everybody at Rapid Ascent also transitioning from the military into civilian roles?
So they're all affiliated with the military in some way, I believe, at this point. So there's military spouses can do it, military children can do it. So not everybody's actually been through the military, but are in some way associated with it. Yeah, and we had everybody you could think of. We had, a prior dentist coming in, a prior nurse. So all different aspects ended up, and sometimes it's gonna take some people coming from things like that additional time, right? Because simple things, as where you're having to explain how to open command prompt or things like that, some things that are natural for some other people are obviously going to be harder for other people. But I'd say Rapid did a really good job of taking those people aside and giving them extra time and spinning them up. So, yeah.
And Ariel, we had a question about how difficult interviews were. So could we talk a little bit about the interview process? How difficult was the interview process? Do you remember like cybersecurity questions that you had to answer during interviews that you can share? And like, what do you remember it being a particularly grueling process? Was it easy? Like, how did it actually go?
So it was a difficult and frustrating process. I think I had I had interviews with 3 to 4 companies before I landed where I'm at Pearson. And I learned that especially for transitioners, the biggest key is to, know how to, effectively communicate what you're doing in your previous role to sound a lot like cybersecurity. And that's what I learned working with my most recent career coach in the process with getting a job. Because in the status of the interview for getting into a tech job or even in any other field, sorry guys, my English was not working just now. But the first stage is talking to the technical recruiter, and they're just kind of looking at the job description and then your resume and hearing what you're saying. They don't have like in-depth knowledge of whatever you're doing, want to do in cybersecurity, where they're like, okay, that sounds exactly like what we do in cybersecurity, just done in a different industry. If it doesn't like line up with what the job description is asking, it doesn't filter through. Kind of like when you're, creating a resume and trying to match it with the job description online and trying to filter that through. So since I worked in physical security operations, and that's essentially the same concept as cybersecurity operations, I just kind of switched some of the words. Like let's say the days I worked at the front desk, doing badging or security for events and things like that, I would say identity and access management, since that's a cybersecurity term. We did a lot of incidents, whether we had robberies and all of that for the bank I worked for. So instead of saying, oh, we had robberies, I would say we triaged incidents, and we had an alerting system, and it did incident response, which is major. So those keywords definitely helped me filter through. And then by the time I got to talk to the team, that made things so much easier. But once you get to talk to the actual team that you'll be interviewing with, they'll ask you more technical questions. So on my resume, I did a lot of Code Academy coding projects for, let's say, SQL injection attacks and cross-site scripting. So they literally asked me how that worked. and to walk them through that. And that was pretty difficult. And then, of course, asking me a whole bunch of Linux command questions. And I was just new to getting to Linux. So that was a little difficult. But yeah, they did ask the technical things on my resume.
And which role, like, so you are in security operations now. Did you apply for mostly security operations roles when you graduated? Like, were
No.
those 3 or 4 companies that you interviewed with, were those all security operations roles?
No, so I think most of them were some form of security engineers. I think
Okay.
I applied to a couple security operations, and this was the one that I got.
Okay. All right, cool. And similar question there, Caleb. Like, how competitive did the market feel when you graduated and started doing those interviews?
Well, it felt completely overwhelming because one of the
Okay.
biggest problems of tech is the idea of, um, you know, there's so much to learn, and especially when you start getting into it from the boot camp, you start to realize how much you don't know. And so, especially with the problem with the boot camp, I found is it's looked down upon as a certification process. People think that having a university degree is that's where you actually know what you're doing. And I started to realize that actually nobody knows what they're doing. There's very few people who actually have true knowledge, and those people are getting paid phenomenally well, and they are not the people that are applying for the position that you're looking for. So I realized, okay, well, what are my actual strengths? What are my actual assets? And I realized I can figure anything out. I may not know it now, but I can figure it out. I can learn it, and I have the brain and the capability to be able to come up with a solution. And so when I happened to get the actual interview, I lucked out in the sense that I was able to talk directly to the actual decision maker, and through that, after a 10-minute phone call conversation, I was able to get the job. The technical questions were actually pretty limited because I was able to sell myself as the idea of I might not know it. I'll tell you I don't know it, and I'll figure it out by tomorrow. And that's ultimately worked out really well for me. Like my boss 2 weeks ago said, well, we need to figure out how we're dealing with large language models and the data that's getting out of our company. And he said to our entire team of anybody have any suggestions? And nobody did. And I said, okay, well, I'll figure it out. I'll give you some suggestions by tomorrow. So 2 weeks later, I was giving him and essentially the board of directors a presentation on what security procedures we should be putting in place in the company and how we should do it. So 2 weeks, I became an expert in AI. Well, maybe not a true expert, but enough to be able to understand how it applies to cybersecurity. And then in 2 weeks, they want me to do a presentation to our 1,000+ employee company. So yeah, so as long as you have the
Definitely.
right attitude, you can make it work, even though if you don't have the technical things on your resume that you might think you need.
Caleb, I feel like what you just said definitely highlights the difference between your time, 10 years in insurance versus this switch over to cybersecurity. So you mentioned, feeling overwhelmed when you were in the job search. And Barnelli asked this question of like, what was your job change strategy? If you kind of whittled it down, did you feel like you had a strategy that was working for you?
Yeah, for the most part, I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to do something where I was constantly learning, and I wanted to be able to have something that interested me every day, and something that kept me engaged. So that was ultimately my goal, and I knew that that was the goal that I needed, and that my old job, my old industry did not provide that. So that motivated me through the pain of trying to go through all the different, I mean, sending out hundreds and hundreds of resumes, and you get no response from most of them. But it is a process. I'll not sugarcoat that. It's a difficult thing, and in a lot of ways, I did luck out. But I was supported really well through Lighthouse Labs career team. They were able to give me actionable tips and tricks of how to get through, and several of those were absolutely critical in me getting that phone interview. If I hadn't followed their advice, I'd still be probably sending hundreds of resumes a day.
Yes, that is really good advice, and sometimes you have to kind of like fight through that overwhelming that overwhelming feeling, and the having the team behind you is can help you fight through it. So, and Chris, Devin asked, besides LinkedIn and networking events, how can I better align myself to get a cybersecurity role? So, if there are networking events or groups or anything that anyone suggests in cybersecurity that you want to give a shout out to, we would love for you to do that. But if there's anything other than LinkedIn and networking events um, that Devin can take away, um, how can
So,
you?
I would say besides networking events is getting involved with your local chamber of commerce, right? Because those those guys and gals working in that industry know everything that's in the local area, right? They're going to know, different executives in different places, uh, there's the ISC2, all sorts of different programs that you can become a member of that really look out for the people that are members. They do weekly or monthly dinners with keynote speakers to kind of help you align, and the type of people are going to that are the type of people that are going to hire you.
And ISC2 is like continuing education in cybersecurity. You
Right,
do like
right,
the
yep.
certifications. Okay, cool. Okay, local chamber of commerce, ISC2. Those are great recommendations. Um, Ariel and Caleb, any other, even if they are networking events or things on LinkedIn, anything that y'all would recommend to somebody who's trying to break into cybersecurity?
Yes, I have three. One, ISSA. I think that is nationwide. Another one, since I'm going to represent being, the woman in this chat or in this group, there is a group called Women in Cybersecurity, WICYS. And then third, representing as, a black woman or black person, there is a group, I can drop it in the chat, but they help black people get into cyber. I didn't use it, but they have some really cool things and mentorships as well. So I can drop that other one in the chat when I find it.
Please do, and we will put it in the YouTube chat as well. Okay, fantastic. All right, well, with our last few minutes, we want to talk about your kind of day-to-day in cybersecurity and the future of cybersecurity. Ariel, will you talk a little bit about what you are working on today as an information security analyst at Pearson? What does your day-to-day look like?
So my day to day, besides answering emails, we do respond to a lot of minor and major incidents, whether, let's say, someone clicks on a malicious URL, to keep it vague, clicks on a malicious URL or, has unapproved software on their device. My team creates the detection rules to remove those or alert us so we can make sure we take the appropriate action. I'm also looking at the fact that we don't have, I guess, a proper way to report metrics. So now I'm learning how to create, dashboards and connect APIs to best reflect that for the company. And then also my favorite thing is doing the monthly phishing simulations. So, we're the ones that's coding up the emails and tricking people and, all that fun stuff. So those are some of the things I'm working on.
Amazing. A lot of like internal education at Pearson. That's really cool. And Caleb, how about you? What do you get to work on as a security architect and analyst for
Uh,
NWI?
Doing a lot. Our company realized that they didn't like their current SIEM, which is a security and information management system. They didn't like the one that they had, so they essentially just handed me a hundreds of thousands, or multiple hundreds of thousands of dollar program and just said, figure it out. So I've been building an entire SIEM and monitoring system from the ground up, which means I'm learning all the different aspects and softwares that interconnect. I'm developing all the rules of how to monitor it and the policies behind that. Then of course I've got the support of all the networking teams and so on, but I'm able to build from the ground up essentially an entirely new version of a security system, which is it's a massive challenge. It's been taking me months, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
And how much of your role is about training and educating other employees in
There's a
security?
lot of that. That was another thing of the idea of just being forward and trying new things, not being afraid to fail. There was a situation where I was able to have an opportunity to public speak, and I took the opportunity to start plugging for the cybersecurity safety. And I started teaching the employees, and then the board of directors was going, "Oh, wow, that's really useful information to know. You should be doing more of that." And I've now I've done 5 or 6 different presentations to the company. I've developed our education system as well. So I really enjoy that too. So that's probably about a quarter of my job.
Awesome.
I feel like for a boot camp grad, I mean, we're always talking about those transferable skills, communication, those soft skills that a boot camp grad like brings to their new career. And in cybersecurity, that communication, being able to educate people about the importance of cybersecurity on their teams, like in their new companies, is so important. Such an important skill. And so, bringing all of your experience, all of your experience from your past careers is just like truly priceless. Really, really points out the value of your past kind of lives and past careers. Amazing.
Awesome. And Chris, as a cybersecurity coach now, what kinds of projects are you working on, or who are you mentoring?
So, yeah, I was lucky enough to be hired by Rapid Ascent because I've been an instructor in the military, for teaching people how to aerial refuel for 15 years. So I really enjoy instructing. So I was kind of leaned on quite a bit by my cohort while I was going through and did quite a bit of an instruction with them to help them out. So Rapid Ascent at the time was thinking about bringing on coaches to kind of do the same thing officially. So with that, I do one-on-one coaching sessions. So any of the learners and any of the cohorts can schedule time with me one-on-one, whether they're having trouble with like a try hack me or they're having issues installing a VM or Metasploitable or something. I kind of walk them through that. But right now, that's only maybe 20% of my time. Rapid's got a couple really big projects going on that I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to get into on that. But adding a lot of content for the company right now. So I'm spending a lot of time. So I have a new boom mic now because I'm recording a lot of content for the company to kind of revamp their how-to videos, because everything's instructed, but you also want, hey, I need a quick 5 minutes to remember how to install a VM. So I'm making that kind of content for the company so that the cohorts have, different little learning tools with them. And then there's another big cyber range going up that I'm helping out with.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we will keep an eye out for some of those new things. Okay, so we got a couple of these questions. Jack Arlen asked, "What is the future of IT and cybersecurity careers?" And then Sandeep asked, "What are the challenges of moving into cybersecurity careers and into a cybersecurity career with the arrival of AI?" So I'll just say for anyone who wants to answer this, do you think of AI as a threat or as an opportunity for cybersecurity?
I can jump into that one. And I'm sure Caleb will have a lot to add with kind of what he's been learning lately. So I would say that AI is both a threat and an opportunity to cybersecurity, right? So AI doesn't program itself, so you're always going to have cybersecurity engineers working with it. But AI is making cyber threats more sophisticated. Attackers are using AI for automated phishing, deep fake scams, intelligent malware. So on the other hand, it's also improving cybersecurity by automating threat detection, identifying anomalies, and streamlining security processes. It's not going to take away, I don't think it's going to take away from our need for cybersecurity, but what it's going to do is make us more efficient in what we do. So there may not be as much of the little tasks that shouldn't be taking up these people that are very well trained, they're overeducated for certain tasks that need to be done. So it's actually more cost efficient to incorporate AI into taking on some of the little things. But I think all the big things you're always going to have human eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. It is absolutely an incredibly useful tool if used properly, but it's also a threat. And ultimately, people think that it's not anywhere close to Skynet. It's not going to take over the world anytime soon. It's got a long way to go before that. But honestly, I found the biggest threats and dangers of AI from a security perspective are the same threats that we face all the time. When you get some developer that doesn't authenticate the system with passwords, and so it's completely open. That is a way worse problem than the very specific issues relating to AI. I mean, look into DeepSeek. It's a hilarious disaster of how badly their security is, and not because the AI necessarily is bad, but because the developers don't secure their servers. So the standard problems of security, I will absolutely apply. And for now, they're way more problematic than the actual usage of AI. Now, as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of potential danger for things, especially like the prevalence of being able to create all kinds of phishing attempts and deep fakes and so on. So we have to keep an eye on it in the future. But as far as for the future of the cybersecurity industry, we're expected to, I think it was $1.5 trillion worth of damages is expected in 2025. So our industry is not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to triple and quadruple in size very shortly. There's a lot of potential future positions available. Well, maybe not available now, but if you can get into it, there's a lot of opportunities for jobs if you're interested in the industry.
Ariella, do you agree? Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, no, certainly. I did want to add one minor thing. It's not related to AI, but it's to the last point Caleb made, is that yes, for the whole process, there are a lot of jobs. I can't remember the exact number, but there's a huge major gap in cybersecurity, but it's mainly like in the middle sector. So it's a harder barrier to entry to get in. But once you're in, that's where a plethora of jobs are. And then, of course, probably that'll funnel out when you get to the senior level. But yes, cybersecurity's biggest gap is in the middle
In
tier.
that mid-tier range. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we'll for sure see AI creating more threats. We'll also see AI, making cybersecurity engineers more efficient. But the headlines, that like AI cybersecurity tools may take over cybersecurity jobs, is I can't imagine that happening in the cybersecurity industry anytime soon in the way that things are going. But all right, okay. Well, I know we're about 5 minutes over our time. I'll just ask since we asked this to every alum that goes to a boot camp, we have to ask it to y'all. And Ariel, I know we've asked this question to you, but at this point in your career, was enrolling at a cybersecurity boot camp worth it for you? It took time. Caleb, it took you about 3 months to do the boot camp, but a year to make the full career change. Chris, obviously, SkillBridge paid for and the GI Bill paid for a lot of the tuition, but like still a lot of opportunity cost there. It takes a lot of time and effort. And Ariel, about 18 months to do the full career change. Would you say that doing a cybersecurity boot camp was worth it?
Yes, I can say it was worth it and keep time short for two reasons. One, the time that you'll save, let's say a year to 18 months compared to 2 to 4 years if you do a master's or a bachelor's. And then also, it is much more affordable than doing a 2 to 4 year degree, unless you get a scholarship. But in general, it's much cheaper.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, the problem of total self-study is there is a infinite amount of I mean, maybe not quite, but it feels like an infinite amount of information to learn about cybersecurity and just tech in general. And so if you're just trying to learn things by yourself, you have no idea what's actually valuable and what you would actually use in the industry. So going through a boot camp, they can direct your education and direct your thoughts to the right avenue. So you're not just spinning your wheels learning things will never actually be useful. So I would say for myself, 100%. Absolutely, it was the right call. I don't necessarily think everybody it would be the right call. If you are not interested in learning everything, if you just see the shiny paycheck that is often advertised about cybersecurity, it certainly exists. But if you don't love to learn and you're not comfortable being uncomfortable and constantly feeling like you don't know what you're talking about and just deciding, okay, I'm going to figure it out what I'm talking about, but ultimately I know more than what anybody else does, right? You start to realize that imposter syndrome is not actually real because you might not know much, but you know much more than the next guy because he has no idea what he's talking about. So if you're that kind of person and you enjoy learning, you enjoy the challenge, it's a phenomenal career. 100% would recommend a boot camp. Honestly, probably over a degree, just because the degree, if you spend 4 years, by the time you're in your fourth year, the first year may no longer be relevant, depending on what you're doing.
I would agree with both of them. So for me, it was absolutely 100% worth it. I can't really imagine spending that amount of time on my own to develop the knowledge and skills that I had. But I will also say that I think some people get into boot camps thinking they're going to come out of the boot camp an expert. You're not at all. I'd say the entire time you're in the boot camp, you're going to kind of feel like you don't know what you're doing. But what you don't realize is how much you're actually learning. It's just that there's a constant feed of new information and techniques that you have to try to remember, and you're going to drop a lot of them. But one thing I will say is you're going to get to your first cybersecurity job, and you're going to know a lot more than the guy sitting to the left or the right of you. You're just not going to feel like it. But the guy to your left or your right may have never even used Nmap. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things you're learning that you don't realize how important they are, and just the fact that you know about them is a huge thing.
Amazing. Well, I think that is the perfect place to wrap up. So thanks to everyone for tuning in, and thank you to all of our panelists. We cannot thank you for being here enough and for answering all of our questions about cybersecurity careers and your bootcamp experiences. I think more than ever, I've learned that cybersecurity is a broad field. So whether you're interested in like penetration testing or network security or cloud security or compliance, there is a path for you. So really appreciate everybody going into their day-to-day and all of their backgrounds. And we will post this video on the Core Support blog, and we will send it to y'all in a follow-up email later this week. So look out for that.
And we will definitely be doing more live Q&As throughout this year. I know we're definitely going to do one on tech interviewing or tech job search. But let us know in the comments or email us at hello@coursereport.com to let us know if there's a certain topic that you'd really like us to cover and to find some subject matter experts to answer your questions.
We will see you on the next one.
Yeah.
Bye. All right.